What's up, game boys and girls? Big T here, back with another video. And in this video, we're going to talk about how Nintendo just keeps getting away with this stuff. Fanboy. So, as you guys all know, the Nintendo Switch is a huge success. We're about to reach out and touch the Switch 2 at some point in the near future, and that's all very exciting. The Switch seems to be Nintendo's biggest success, definitely from home console wise, because the hybrid nature, it just lends itself really well to being a successful device. And Nintendo bounced back from Wii U and how horribly that thing sold. And I just want to talk about the rhetoric that happens on the other fanboy sides, because I do watch those guys' videos. I find entertainment in it, and usually the narrative from them is basically it's cope. It's all cope. It's always cope. It's always, Nintendo just put they could put their label in a box and it'll sell. We all know that that's not true. They could just put the Nintendo logo on something and it sells. Not true. We had a Wii U. It didn't sell. It didn't sell that great. GameCube didn't sell that great. Great system, but didn't sell that great. Some would argue the N64, obviously it got trounced by the original PlayStation, but it didn't sell all that much less. It still sold millions less than the Super Nintendo did. So Nintendo doesn't always sell just because it's Nintendo. It's a coping mechanism that you hear from fanboys. So basically, when they are defending or trying to defend the fact that their games, their favorite consoles games, the first party stuff doesn't sell nearly as well, as the attach rate isn't nearly as high as it is on Nintendo platforms, and that is the case even with their lower selling systems. The GameCube had high attach rates for the first party stuff, and so did the Wii U. Yes, Mario Kart 8, the original, sold 7 million units on the Wii U, a system that only sold 13 million units. So that is a huge high attachment rate. And I just wonder. I know the answer. Would any other gaming company, be able to recover and bounce back from a Wii U? Like, would they even last? Would they even survive? Would a PlayStation 4 have survived selling 13 million units? would a Xbox One or Xbox Series X or something like that, would that have survived selling 13 million units? Of course not. Those guys would be scrambling. They would either close up shop. They would never recover from that. But yet Nintendo can do that. That speaks to the strength of their first party IP. And I'll talk about how these guys see that as a weakness. But what they often say is, because they're coping, because it's not based in facts or anything like that, is that Nintendo Nintendo fans just buy everything Nintendo, which is, again, utter nonsense. It's the fact that they're coping with the fact that their console exclusives don't sell as well. And they've been, what's the word? They've been groomed. You can't even use that word anymore because it's been negative. It's been, even though it's not a negative word, it's been used negatively in the last few years or so. But they've been cultivated on this. Games only matter if they're super AAA budget, movie looking type of games, when most of this industry hasn't had that. Most of the years of this industry hasn't had games like that. Most of the games that exist today, that exist in the world from the beginning of making video games, have not had this crazy, nonsensical, super budget. How well is that serving you, Sony fanboys? How well is that serving you? How well is that serving the company right now? This is not sustainable. I mean, you can't put movie budget budgets on video games. I mean, it's crazy for movies, but at least movies are everywhere. They're not restricted to one box. You can go out and see the movie at any theater you want. It goes on to digital later, and so there's another audience there, and it goes on to physical, although that's kind of dying. But those are three different markets you can make your money back with. But when it comes to a game on a system, especially exclusive, it's locked to that one system. You don't have these extra revenue rounds. That's why you get these guys are starting to put their stuff on PC and talking about putting their games on competing platforms because they don't have those extra revenue streams that a movie does with that budget, right? Or even I didn't even mention the fact that it gets licensed out to different streaming platforms. That's another stream of revenue for movies. Is that these guys are starting to share like Warner Brothers is putting their stuff on Netflix. They have their own streaming service. They have Max, but they're putting their stuff onto Netflix because that's more money, for them because they can license out stuff to Netflix and Netflix will pay for that stuff. So this is something that's happening in the world of entertainment, movies especially, and video game fans because they're stuck in their ways. They've been stuck in their ways for so long. They don't like this new way of distributing games. But that it's going to be what happens. Like I said, Warner Brothers has HBO Max or Max streaming service, and yet you see Warner Brothers movies on Netflix, and Disney also shares their stuff. So, and they have Disney Plus. So this is the wave of the future. You want more revenue streams, and that's why this is happening. But what they keep saying about Nintendo, first of all, Nintendo exists only in their when Nintendo is doing well, then they exist in their own bubble. They're in their own little world. But when they're doing bad, they want to then they want to incorporate Nintendo. Like when Wii U was definitely competing with everything else. When it was on the market, it was competing with PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and even 360 and Xbox 360 or 360 and PS3. It was competing then. Then the Wii U was competing with them. But when the Switch comes out and destroys everything, it's in its own bubble. And they did the same thing with the Wii. Right when the Wii was destroyed, it's a totally new different thing. Is they're not competing with Microsoft and Sony when they're successful. You see this double speak in the media, and it's definitely with gamers, right? And so they try to make Nintendo an other because Nintendo is so successful. So now they're an other. They don't compete with us. They're in their own. But when they don't do well, then they're competing with Microsoft. You see how that happens? That's a thing that I observe. It happens in a lot of different mediums, but specifically we're talking about games here, obviously. And so the other thing is, the one way to try to say it's not competing when they're not doing well, or when they're doing well, excuse me, they're not competing, is their hardware. Oh, their hardware is. How do they get away with making such hardware, such piddling, pathetic hardware, and their games are just cartoony looking and all this stuff. If you're a challenge for gaming, if you're taking hours away from another potential game company where you can spend an hours on that, you're competing with them. So if I'm playing Pokemon, let's say 30 hours a week, that's time I could be spending on another platform playing their games. So you are competing with other platforms. Nintendo competes with everybody because they compete for gamers' time. That's the big thing about these games as a service games is that they're competing with time. That's why all these companies want to make their own games as a service game. They're big Fortnite type of game. Everybody's scrambling to try to do that because they know that games like Fortnite, people just play that and that's it, or mostly, or they play one or two other games. So you're competing with other platforms. You're competing as a Fortnite. Fortnite is basically its own platform at this point, like a Minecraft. And so you're competing for gamers' time and money. So yes, Nintendo competes with Sony and Microsoft. Just because they're doing so well, people want to act like they don't compete. Oh, they're in their own bubble. They're in their own world. They exist like there's some different gaming world. Like, they're outside of other gaming. It's Nintendo gaming, and then there's every other game. Like, that's nonsense. It's nonsense, and it's a coping mechanism. These guys are coping, right? So I always thought that was funny. But it's like, you guys need to maybe, or your companies that you covet so well, so grandly, need to maybe look at what Nintendo is doing and try to cultivate new audiences. I think Microsoft is actually trying to do that with their smaller games, their Pentiments and their Hi-Fi Rushes, and even like their Super Lucky's Tale. Those are Nintendo-like games to me, and they seem to understand that. What's the other? Sea of Thieves and Grounded. Those make sense on a Nintendo platform, so it makes sense that Microsoft might want to put them on the Switch, because I think Nintendo fans are some of the most diverse fans on the planet, because we don't have these walls built up, these stipulations that we say, oh, this is not a real game, or we don't have that. We play everything. We literally play everything. And when the hardware is up to the standard, enough, then we'll actually get everything. I think that's why a lot of people are excited for Switch 2, because the hardware I think will be good enough to where you can port games and they're more playable than they have been on the Switch. You can port some of the bigger titles over. If the Switch 2 is let's say a PS4 Pro type graphics wise, I think that would be very good. Obviously, like a Steam Deck. Steam Deck pretty much can play everything. Obviously, you can change the settings and stuff, but at that point, if it gets to Steam Deck level, these companies will be able to, hey, well, these are the Steam Deck settings. We can use these same settings for the Switch 2, and that's great. Or any of the other what do you call them, handheld PCs. That's something that they'll be able to do at that point. But it's funny because that's what these guys will premise a lot of their coping talk with. Nintendo gets away with this. No, they're not getting away with it. They're there from the beginning, basically, and understanding game design and how games should work and how they could be for everyone. Not just you make these super budget games, but your audience is so focused on a certain age demographic, and you can't reach more people, right? And that is a problem with these companies. Yeah, you're happy as a PlayStation fanboy or an Xbox fanboy. You're happy when you get these big AAA googly graphic games, and you're happy, but the company itself can't sustain it because it's only catering to you. They only make games that cater to you. So Nintendo makes games that cater to everyone, from 0 to 60 and up. That's a good thing, because you are cultivating your audience, for one, to play more different types of games, more diverse types of games. You don't have these stipulations. It have to be 60 frames per second at all times, 60 frames to 120 frames per second, and have these ultimate movie, real life, lifelike graphics. So, that's a specific audience. And that's why PC thrives so well, because they have tons of different types of games and they serve tons of different types of audiences. And so when you guys can pull your brains out of that mentality, it'll benefit your companies that you love so much. It'll benefit them because they'll feel like they can put out a game like a Pentiment or a Ori or a Cuphead or whatever, right? They can put out these types of games, these smaller games. We were talking about it on the podcast, talking about Gravity Rush and how that game just did not work for Sony's audience. Like, you guys just don't want to play games like that. Games that have a certain type. Now, some of you do. I'm not saying none of you do. What I'm saying, the overwhelming majority of you guys didn't care for that game, something like that, or Concrete Jungle, or these Japan studio type of games that would thrive on a Nintendo platform. They would do very well on a Nintendo platform, and maybe even the Xbox at this point, because they are starting to cultivate their fans to play these types of games more. So yeah, Gravity Rush came out and it just bombs, you know. And well, first of all, it came out, the original one came out on the Vita, which, you know, the Vita didn't do very well either. But then you had Gravity Rush 2, nobody cared for the most part. But that game I think would have done, excuse me, would have done well on a Nintendo platform because we play off brand, off style type of games all the time. We're used to doing that, and the budgets are lower on those games, and so you can sustain something like that. But some of these bigger companies don't like small money. I said that in the podcast too. They want the big hitters, even if it's something that's profitable. Even if they make let's say $5 to $10 million off of something like a Gravity Rush, that's not worth it to them. They want the big stupid money, so they don't make those types of games, and it's unfortunate. But I just think it's funny that these guys cope by saying Nintendo gets away with this or gets away with that. They get away with it because their fans aren't snobs. We're not gaming snobs like you guys are. They get away with having lower powered consoles and games with cartoony graphics and all that stuff because we're not gaming snobs. You guys are the snobs, and that's why you don't get that stuff. And they can't sustain, by making these big expensive games because you also don't buy those enough, to warrant their budget. They sell pretty well in the scheme of things, but because of their budgets, they have to sell these astronomical numbers, and there's just not enough of you guys who buy them because their attach rate for these first party games is nowhere near in the ballpark of a Nintendo. They're not selling games 60 million copies like a Mario Kart Deluxe, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. They're not selling, they don't have Pokemons and whatnot. Why do you think Power World's doing so well? People like the aesthetics of it. Obviously, it looks like Pokemon, but it opens itself up to more audiences than something else of that ilk. Because of the graphical style, it's not overly demanding and all that kind of stuff. And the budget was like $6 million for that game, and it sold 20 million copies at this point. It's insanity. So, yeah, Nintendo gets away with it because we allow them to get away with it because there's nothing to get away with. They're getting away with making well budgeted games, high quality games on hardware that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. They actually make money on. So yeah, they're going to continue to get away with it as long as you guys are snobs. So there it is. Yeah, that's my video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. You think Nintendo is getting away with something wrong like these guys do? It's cope. It's just cope. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. Thank you again for watching and listening, and I'll see you fools next time. Peace out.